But right now, I want to bring up for the last segment before our break, the tremendous Gore, who is the CEO of Affinidi. Affinidi, as you have heard, is our tech partner in this, but deeply involved in the first-person project. But more importantly, and you're mic'd up, right? So
yes.
You don't need that mic. Has a tremendous career background that I think gives us a possibility to look at where we're at, or where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going. Because for those of you who don't know, Glenn was the chief architect of a little company called AWS. Amazon keeps coming up, actually. Amazon Web Services. So, and you've seen it, right? You've seen, you saw that previous panel, the sort of instinct towards centralization, right? Centralize, decentralize, re-centralize. And it's just it's sort of an inherent part of, it seems, the Silicon Valley model that just became the go-to for everything. It's very hard to break out of it. But you are doing your darndest to come up with tech that you call dangerous tech. I love that. Tools that will help us to, I think, really just restructure that value proposition around a much more decentralized system. So, yeah, I mean, talk us a little bit about what you learned in those years at AWS.
Following on from the last panel, I think the uncomfortable truth.
Oh, by the way, again.
Yeah, Australian.
It's not deliberate, but just be warned. Right? You're all going to be speaking with this stupid accent soon.
Yeah, Australian intelligence. So, the uncomfortable truth is that a lot of what we want is not economically investable. That is actually the truth. Investing in privacy and trust is not good economic judgment. And I say that I lead an investment company as well called Lemmatree, and we run into this problem all the time. And you have to have patience and know that, I'm not saying let's give up and not do it. What I'm saying is that you have to have a long-term view of where we want to be going and what is the technology that we need to build, and not get distracted by everything that is happening around us. Because I can tell you, there are mornings I wake up and just think, give up. Right? How are you going to beat the giants? How do I compete against Amazon, Google, Apple, OpenAI? We hoped at the start of the AI revolution, interestingly in the tech industry, and I come from hardcore technology futurist aspect, we had a naive view that AI may actually break up the giants and that there would be new AI companies that would come in and disrupt. And this is good because it drives better innovation when there are more players in the market. 2026, it's centralizing again into the same players. And that is a bad thing. If you look at history of data access, every single time we've made data more available to others, that's driven trillion-dollar waves of innovation, right? The internet itself, Wikipedia, YouTube, social media, cloud services. But will AI do the same?
Gutenberg Bible as well, almost, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just moments of information opening up.
Correct. Yeah. And so you have to have some faith in this system and basically say, look, if we all keep trying to do the right thing, I think we will get there. But you've got to be patient in how you do it.
Now, one of the companies you mentioned in there, I have to leap out and say, of course, is Google. Google's one of our sponsors here, right? And Google's a multifaceted company, and I'm not going to sit here and sort of analyze them per se, but it's great to have them on board. And I think one of the things that's interesting about Google is, like, because of that multifaceted aspect, there are different parts of that organization that are going to be more ready, really, to capitalize on this open system, and others that have got a moat that they're desperately trying to protect, right? And Google's just an example of many that are in that situation. So how do you play to that, right? Because I mean, to find, because it seems to me like no matter what, the capital and most importantly, the people, the users, the customers, they're all caught up in these systems. So how do we lean in on the parts of those companies, that element of their incentive, both their sort of fear incentive and their positive incentive, to go forward in a more open approach to things rather than the protective.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be economic.
Yeah.
It's the only driver there is.
Yeah.
And right now, the challenge, and the system is broken, we don't have agency ourselves to make a choice, right? All of us are basically trapped in one of two walled gardens. It's either Google or Apple, whether you like it or not. What do you do to protest against that? Not use a mobile phone?
Well,
Use something from
you see it in the piece of paper that we handed out that your team
right.
produced, right? It's like, it's the Google Play.
It's one thing I'm really against is gatekeepers. And, the H2H Connect app, building the app was easy. You know what the hardest thing was? Was getting Apple to approve it. Why does Apple get to pick what app we want to use in this room today in this community? And Apple's reason for rejecting it, we don't think it has long-term value. Why do you care? Why does Apple get to decide what you put on your device that you paid $2,000+ for if you're an Apple user as you go through this? And so I think there is something that has to fundamentally change around how to give a voice to this. And you've seen this before, which is in innovation. We often call about inversion of benefit. And we think about, privacy is not new. We've talked about privacy entire civilization. Secret societies do exist for this reason. But the reality is, as you kind of go through this secrecy aspect and privacy, is that AI will actually benefit humans more because we will invent better security and privacy for AI that inversely will benefit the humans more. Just think about that for a second, right? Absolutely, it's there. We will care more about the privacy of our AI than ourselves.
Wow.
But we'll get the benefits of it. And this is why I do not believe for a second, right? And I see this, and it really annoys me a lot, where people are inventing different parallel tasks. We'll create a system for humans to authorize and authenticate. And we'll create a separate system for AI agents. It's bullshit. Sorry, but it does not work. The future is this. It's AI working with the humans, humans working with the AIs, and we are all augmented. It must be one system. Right? By giving, it's what the keynote speakers say, giving agency to others gives me agency as you go through it. Giving agency to my AI agents, to the services and technology, actually empowers me as I go through it. And so you're seeing this play out in real time. And there's pretty big battles in the tech innovation space about exactly this problem. And I can tell you, the best solution that I have seen to this, and where we're putting money where our mouth is things like the first-person collective. Looking at decentralized trust graphs. Because it doesn't matter whether you're human, an AI agent, a robot, a building, a product, a transaction. They can all benefit from the same architecture here. And if you look at history of digital revolutions, anything that is the same has won. And by the way, you build it first, specs come later. We're not going to wait for specifications and standards and the ISO committees and everything else. We'll work with them in parallel. But they're not going to be the ones that drive the innovation at the front end. They're going to play catch up as you go through.
I'm so glad you raised this, because I think that has been the intent of this conference, to try to show how these two things come together, right? When we started putting this conference, we were thinking about it really about the human piece. How do we, and it's an instinct as how do we protect the humans? And I think that's a healthy instinct. But to your point, it cannot be considered separate from that. And so the next session, Tricia will be talking about proof of control, which really sort of goes to that next stage, right? It's the downstream part of what this is all about. But to think of it together, and it's almost like a recursive kind of thing that is constantly working itself, is really important. But I want to shift a little bit here, because you mentioned Lemetry, right? You are, you lead that unit within Temasek, right? And Temasek, for those who don't know, is one of the biggest sovereign wealth funds in the world. It's the Singapore government sovereign wealth fund. Obviously, a state investor is got a different set of priorities than a VC or a hedge fund.
Yes.
And so two questions. Like, what is Singapore looking for here? Like, why are they interested in this technology and this approach? And B, how does that framing, right? A state is supposed to be eternal, and its interests go beyond just profit. So how is it thinking about these sorts of investment issues?
Yes, it's a really good question. There's a few dimensions to it. The first one is, from a Singaporean perspective, Singapore looks at it and says, why does so much of the world's technology come from the US? How do they equalize that a little bit and have companies and technology innovation from Southeast Asia being able to compete toe-to-toe with it? And part of that starts with culture and talent that comes into it. So that's one dimension. Second dimension is Temasek is a very seasoned, experienced investor at a global level. And they were one of the first to really invest heavily in China as China grew, big investor here in the US. But they've seen the pattern, and they know that when you disrupt that access to information and you allow for more people to innovate, if they can be part of that wave, they get better insight as to where to put their money in who is then building on the applications that come after that as they go through it. So ultimately it's making money in a return for them. Where we're lucky is that Asia typically takes a longer term perspective on investment. They don't have just short-term goals. And I think that is one of the fundamental differences that you see between different investing markets around. You see this as well from Middle East a little bit. The Middle East has a very different philosophy about what they invest in and how they invest in it to the US, to Europe, to Asia as you go through this. And you're starting to see parts of the industry actually go to geographic areas depending on what they're trying to do and what the investors are trying to drive at a greater scope as well.
So I want you to put your, systems analyst, and I mean the biggest, right? This global network system concept hat on here, and maybe draw a little bit about your experience pulling together all of the participants, not just the team that you led at AWS, but also all of the users, all the customers. It's like this big ecosystem, right? Albeit one that is all rolling down into this one centralized platform, and sort of look to like, how do you see this? AI, this agentic AI economy rolling out. And I want to just focus on one aspect of that, and that is Apple. Because we had Apple, Apple's a gatekeeper. But Apple, interestingly, is not your classic, centralized data extraction surveillance capital model. It's a device model. And some people are saying maybe Apple's going to win, because ultimately all of our devices are going to be the place in which Apple is going to, AI is going to reside, and that's what we need for privacy and so forth. And that at the end of the day, these big, massively invested LLMs are actually going to lose out to Apple. So I suppose just where is it all going, and is there an opportunity in that, right? Can we hope that the economic instincts to actually serve the customer as opposed to extract the information and surveil them is actually going to be the model that wins?
I think it will win.
Good to hear.
And I think what you're going to see this year is I think you're going to see two macro trends occur. The first one is going to be a significant change in human behavior, in that all of us are going to become always on humans. And what I mean by this is actually, for those of you that remember dial-up internet, right? You had to make a conscious effort.
This audience skews a little bit older than the regular Silicon Valley audience. So there's a few of us who remember.
You had to pay back then in Australia $5 an hour, and you were really specific as to, okay, I'm going online to achieve this. Then DSL came along, and suddenly you had 20, and your sister would pick up the phone, you'd be like, I'm downloading something, stop. But now we have DSL, and DSL meant that I could always have this connectivity to the internet. And then we got mobile phones with internet access so that we could take pictures and share that with social networks in real time. But human decisions are still only made when I'm available online. And in a world where I believe that the most interaction will start occurring between AI agents, I'm going to become a conductor and orchestrator of my AI agents that represent my intents and what I want with other AI agents 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And this is a fundamental change in the innovation that comes in. And so I think we will, because I think when you think about it this way, does Apple still have a strong play there? Maybe. but I think there's so much room for others to come in and disrupt.
That's what we want, right?
This aspect. That's what you want. You want to open it up and disrupt. So there's this concept that we are always on. We're always going to be available. The second thing is that AI, do not get me wrong, and I love AI. I use it every single day. I'm not just saying that because AI is listening. I am. But the gap between human intelligence and AI intelligence is so misunderstood. And when I see technologists say AI is going to replace humans, you need to go talk to more humans. Right? Because you're sitting behind the keyboard and what you're seeing is a mirror of your own inadequacy when you think AI is anywhere close to replacing humans. We have...
All right. Go humans!
Go humans. Each one of us has a quantum computer in our head, and we don't even understand how it works. But the science that's coming out right now is just showing like there's such a small percentage of it that's hacked.
Yeah.
And humans, we are the greatest hackers of all. If there's one thing you look at history, we cheat, we hack, we do things. And as AI gets more intelligent, human intelligence gets higher. And that's what people are missing is it's not static. It's not like we get stuck here as AI does this. We do this. And I will argue with you that that gap will actually grow and that the future innovators will be the ones that understand that and make advantage of it faster than others.
All right, on that positive note,